Hi Cooler fans, I'm the PC Expert Amateur, and this review is of the Scythe Fuma 3 CPU Air Cooler. Now, I want to read something from their website. Now, keep in mind, this is written by marketers, and marketers are generally unethical and sleazy. So, well, I'm going to attribute this to them. The Fuma 3 is the optimal choice for the high TDP PC and processors. That means CPUs that get really hot. Okay? Yet, on the box, there is no mention of the TDP. On the manual, which you've just seen, there's no mention of the TDP. And on their website, which I'm looking at, there's no mention of the TDP. So clearly, the marketers knew it was not the optimal choice. It just goes to show you can't really trust anybody. Now, there is one interesting thing about this CPU cooler, and that is that it has two fans and they rotate, and I can't make my fingers do this. They rotate. Nope, that's not it. How do I do this? It's so hard. See, it's really hard to get your fingers to rotate in the opposite directions of each other. Oh, I'm starting to get it. Anyways, which we'll find out if that makes any difference to the sound or anything like that. And I've seen this on some other coolers as well, but it's an interesting method for improving things. Anyways, I also have to be honest. And Scythe probably isn't going to like this, but this is directed at Scythe USA 95%, and only a little bit towards Scythe Taiwan. So I wrote to Scythe USA because I had a defective Wander Snail 120 regular speed like this. And when I had initially done my preview of it, which was like 2 years ago, I think, it had worked fine. But then when I went to measure the airflow for the comparison of airflow and pressure differential series, it wouldn't work right. So I wrote to Scythe USA saying, please send me a replacement, because it was still within the warranty period. They didn't respond. Now, I'm trying to remember how many times I emailed them to get help. So it was pretty annoying. The first time I wrote was on October 3rd of last year, and that did not receive a response, if I recall correctly. And then on November 5th, I also wrote to them, and then on December, I was told. So then I think it was November or December, after that second non-response, I went on Scythe Taiwan's Facebook page and said, hey, can you help me? I need a replacement, and Scythe USA is ignoring me. So they said, okay, let's have you send us a message, private message, so that we can help you with this. We can discuss this privately. I was like, there's no message button. I can't send you a message. I mean, I'm summarizing. It was a longer conversation than that. And they were like, okay, so if you can't send us a message, and I said, well, why don't you send me a message? And they said they would, but they didn't. So finally they said, here's the email address for Simon at Scythe USA. So I wrote to Simon. This was on November 18th. I wrote to Simon. And so I gave him, was it Simon? No, I think it was somebody else, actually. Anyways, so it's been a while. yeah. Anyways, all right. So this they gave me somebody's email address, and that person just at Scythe USA. That person just ignored me. And it wasn't Simon because Simon is in Taiwan. My apologies. I think his name was John. Could be wrong. I'd have to wade through Facebook to try and find it. I'm not going to do that. So I came back to the Facebook page after patiently waiting for John or whoever it was to answer me. And from the U.S., which would make sense because I'm in the U.S. They're in the U.S. That's their job. They're supposed to respond, especially after I've been directed to contact John or whatever his name was. Went back to the Facebook page. I said, "Hey, John's not responding to me. I'm getting tired of this," and they didn't answer. And so finally, I wrote to corporate directly. I sent a message to corporate and said, "Hey, look, I have been trying for months now to get you guys to help me replace this fan, and I'm getting blown off. I'm getting jerked around. And, I can just go ahead and let everybody in the world know that this is the way Scythe treats you." And I didn't get a response to that one either. But suddenly on Facebook, they jumped in and responded, and they said, "Okay, since you're having trouble with Scythe USA, contact Simon in Taiwan." And I did. And Simon asked me for some verification. He needed to have a photo of the model of the fan, and he needed to see the model number. So I sent him photographs of both of those things, and so they sent me on the 16th. So I emailed him on the 13th, and on the 16th he had an order created for me, and then on the 18th, that's not important. So anyways, I gave some feedback to Simon on what had happened on the Facebook page. He said, "Well, maybe you can figure it out." And I told him what had happened. I didn't hear back from him. But I got this replacement. So ultimately, after haranguing Scythe several times, I did get a replacement. Now, Arctic has ignored me. And Be Quiet was a pain in the butt, too. So it's not just Scythe, but since this is a Scythe product video, I wanted to get this out there. Just Scythe, please do a better job. Scythe America especially, you suck. I'm really disappointed. I expect better, especially since you guys talk to people like Steve at Gamers Nexus. You know the risk of ignoring people. I mean, look at Corsair. Look at Asus. Look at these other companies have been screwing up big time. You guys need to do better, okay? Anyways, so we're going to talk about this lovely CPU cooler. And first of all, I want to show you what it looks like. The fans do not come attached, so I am trying not to touch the heatsink too much because the oil on your fingers does damage it. I had to attach the fans, which was no big deal. Although the fans are not as wide as the air cooler is, which I found interesting. And I think that's going to have an impact on how the thermal cooling happens. But as you can see, the bolts with the spring loading on them are underneath the middle fan. They sent this screwdriver to help deal with that. So that's fantastic because, frankly, most of the companies that I've gotten coolers from where you have to be able to get at that bolt, and especially with this one, if you look here, you see these little indentations. These are because the bolt is also partially below the heatsink. So you actually have to have it against the heatsink in these holes in order to be able to tighten it. And actually, you don't have to have the fans off. Look, it goes in. I didn't realize that. Okay. So anyways, follow the instructions or do it the way I'm telling you, but whatever. Another interesting thing about these is they've made the height on this side a lot higher for a tall RAM, which is usually because of stupid LEDs. And then these heat pipes are curved back, which is very interesting. One thing I don't care for is, and I know why they did it because they're trying to conserve space, is they put a thin fan on here. And this fan is not useless, but it's not very helpful. And it's a very low powered fan. The airflow is substandard and the static pressure is substandard. This one, the airflow is standard and the static pressure is, let me just refresh my memory here. The static pressure is 1.5 or so millimeters of static pressure. And so that's okay. Not the greatest, but it's okay. They could have done better is what I'm saying on the fans. The tops are covered, so you don't have to see the nipples that are the ends of the heat pipes. You don't need these. These don't help. In fact, they probably hold in a nominal amount of heat. But they're there for decoration because people don't like to see the nipples that are the ends of the heat pipes. On the bottom, we can see that this is indirect coverage for the cold plate. Yeah, and you have to take that plastic off before you mount it. Remember that. It's got 6 heat pipes. And although you have 2 fans, there's no daisy chaining option available. So you'll either have to buy something to daisy chain them together. If you don't have 2 CPU headers, and if you do, then you can put them in separately from each other, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Right. Now, with the package, we get all kinds of stuff other than just the screwdriver and the manual, and it comes in this big box here. And it's very easy to remove because you've got these holes on either side to help you to remove that from the top. And then you get a 6-pack of the fan clips. Why do you have 6? Because if you're thinking about it and you need to beef up the power of this cooler, you can either replace this skinny fan with a bigger fan, and or you can put another fan over here. So you have 2 more clips to add another fan over here, which is really going to make a difference, especially given that the overall static pressure here is not that great. Now, it also comes with a little tube of thermal paste and a spatula. And it doesn't say which of their thermal pastes this is. It looks like there's enough for 1, maybe 2 applications. And we've got back plate and a splitter in case you don't have 2 CPU headers. And we've got these connectors and standoffs. And then these are the brackets that go on the top side of the motherboard. And that is everything. So is it going to be difficult to mount? No, I don't think it's going to be particularly difficult to mount because they have given you the screwdriver that you need. Well, I see one potential problem. The back plate does not have adhesive tape on it, so it's not going to stick to the motherboard. So you'll have to hold it in place as you are connecting it. But, that's, if you're doing it the right way, which is take the motherboard out and mount it that way, it shouldn't be a problem because you'll have this underneath, this cold plate underneath, and then the motherboard is on it, and the pipes, or not the pipes, the poles are sticking out, and then you can put the cooler on top and screw everything in place, and then you can screw the brackets in place. So you have one here, and then you can put the CPU on top of that and bolt it down with the spring-loaded bolts, and Bob's your uncle, as they say in some countries. I don't know why they say it. It doesn't really make any sense to me, but I guess people think it's funny. Anyways, so that said, and by the way, yes, but one of the reasons the box is so darn big is because they have the screwdriver in here. I'm going to have to figure out how to get that back in there later. Whew, it's getting warm. My hair's a lovely mess right now. Okay, so what we're going to do now, and this is going to be a little bit challenging because this thing is off balance because, we have a very wide stack and then a very thin stack over here. Also, I wanted to point out that there's not a lot of special sculpting of the fins, except for the ruts for adding the fans on using the clips. And then there's a little bit of a difference here that you can see. But aside from that, it's pretty plain, and they did not close off the sides at all on these heat sinks, which potentially could cause some loss of performance because maybe too much air, hot air, or even cold air will be coming out the sides instead of traveling all the way through. And these fans are mounted so that the air will go that way. You can mount them the other way as well. So we're going to go ahead and listen. I've got my lapel mic here, and let's see if we can notice anything interesting about this. Okay, I've got them both running at minimum speed. There's a little bit of noise, but not much. In fact, there's less noise on the back side than on the intake side. That's interesting. So when I got it, you may have noticed that I slowed it down. And that was because when it almost got to maximum RPMs, I heard a shift in the way it sounded. Let's listen to it. So I heard a shift in the way it sounded, and it was like, what? And so I tried to figure out what was going on, but I couldn't figure it out. But that's okay, not a big deal. I didn't hear any harmonic resonances. I don't know how much you were able to hear. Honestly, from 2 feet away, this is what I expected. Not because of the specs, but just because they've got fans that are not very powerful on here. I didn't expect to hear a lot of noise, and it is fairly quiet. I would, once it's in your case, you're not likely to hear it on maximum unless you replace these fans with better fans or add, switch this one for a better one or add another one over here. It's just quiet. And then as far as the airflow loss because of the open sides, there isn't very much air loss through the small stack, but and it's a little bit interesting, but it's not coming from the first stack. So I'm feeling some loss of air along the side here, especially on the front side where the fan is mounted. Also some on the other side. And there's actually there's actually more pressure going off the sides than going off the back end here, which doesn't surprise me because of how much is going off of the sides because they didn't partially shut them. So we're not getting as much cooling effect as we possibly could. So I think with the default settings, this is going to be good for low and medium CPUs and some of the higher CPUs even. But as far as this being top tier in its default configuration, no, I don't think it's it's good enough. I think that the marketing was crap when it said it was optimal for high TDP CPUs. It isn't. Now, if you want it to be able to compete with the D15, the thermal and the best thermal right products and so on, and then there's one from Cooler Master and a few others that are really great. You're going to have to do something about the fans, because that is the only thing you can do. So, if you have space in your case, you want to replace this, and then if you got space in your case and you've got a really super hot CPU, replace this with another great fan that's the same as this, and then another one here. The reason I wasn't expecting to hear a lot of noise was, number one, the fans are weak, but number two, they're counter revolving, whatever, and that does seem to have an impact on the actual amount of noise that is produced. Although I can't explain to you why. But Steve at Gamers Nexus did an interview with one of the engineers from Noctua, and that was talking about a bunch of things. And I think that was mentioned within there and maybe discussed a bit. So you might want to look that one up. Anyway, so good, but not great. And we'll find out more when I'm able to actually test it. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great day.
If you would like to help me and get something out of it by helping me on a one-time basis, you can go to my eBay channel, the PC Expert Amateur, where you can purchase the items that I have on sale there. There are lots of keyboards and mouses and some other items as well. I've got cable organizers with power supplies and a bunch of other stuff, a nice variety of things that I have reviewed in the past and I no longer need, and I need to make space. Plus, I also need the money. So if you want to do that, the information's on the screen.
I need to ask for your help. Things have been challenging. Whose life hasn't been challenging lately? So if you can please help me out by liking, subscribing, sharing, commenting, and turning on notifications, that would be really, really super. Also, if you'd like to help me financially and you can't afford to, you can do a super thanks on my Glenn's Fast Reviews channel, or you can become a member there. Or if you prefer, you can go to patreon.com/GLENNMII and become a member there instead. Also, I'd like to give a shout out to Bleeping Computer for their support of my channel. If you need resources for computers, for getting rid of malware and learning about cybersecurity and stuff, Bleeping Computer, BLEEPING computer.com is a great resource. Thanks so much for watching and have a great day.